So with that, let me introduce our next speaker of the day, Travis Rich. Travis is a third-year PhD student in the Viral Communications group at MIT. His background is in electrical engineering and physics. His previous research has included work on digital fabrication, wireless communication, and nanophotonics. This work led and contributes to his current focus on new techniques for open scientific publishing and discourse. His current project, PubPub, is an open and free website that enables anyone to read, write, review, and publish. The PubPub platform provides incentives for data sharing, thoughtful peer review, and collaborative creation. He received his BS and MS in electrical engineering from Boston University. Previously, he has held roles as co-founders of a hardware setup and director of technology for the Andorran government.
Thank you. Hello. I have a little bit of a confession to make, which is that I'm a bit of an outsider, so this is my second only ever conference with publishers, which is pretty exciting. And that leads mostly to the title, which is Journals from Scratch. In my group at the Media Lab, we're in a pretty unique position in that a lot of us don't want to be professors, a lot of us don't want to stay in academia, and so the typical incentive systems that drive a lot of the publishing pipelines don't either apply to us or they're things that we don't care about as much. And coupling that with the fact that we do a lot of sort of big data work and we do a lot of interactive visualizations, the traditional publishing pipeline for us is slow, the wrong format, and gives us rewards that we don't even want. And so a lot of the time we just don't, and we don't publish. But that means that we also don't communicate with each other as well as we want to, and so we decided let's start building a tool for ourselves, for our own lab, and that's where a lot of these ideas came from, and that's a lot of things that are motivating us. And I'm one person out of a big team at the Media Lab and MIT Press who's pushed this forward, so many thanks to them, and these are not all my own ideas. The Journal of Design and Science is a platform or a journal that we just launched a couple months ago, and it's the focus of what I'm going to be talking about, and because it's maybe the thing that has a name that makes the most sense to everyone, I'll describe that really quickly. It's an open access journal. We launched it February 24th. It started with 4 articles, pretty small but pretty curated. The first couple months we had 200,000 views, 167 discussions, and 44 revisions. Don't quite make sense, so I'll skip that for now. In our first 2 months we had about $22 million in revenue. I'm just kidding. Everyone's heart sank. No, it's free to write, free to publish, free to read. We have no money. Okay, so to really understand what the Journal of Design and Science is trying to do, the PubPub platform, which is sort of powering it, is a thing I'll describe really quickly to kind of get you guys up to speed. And both of these, both the Journal of Design and Science, jods.mitpress.mit.edu, is up and open for all of you to play with if you want to jump on there. I'll leave that URL for 5 seconds so you can look. And then also, PubPub is also available at pubpub.org. Again, open. You guys can do everything that I'm going to say I did in this talk sitting where you are right now. So yeah, let me dive into it. This is the slide that I hate and is so oversimplified that I almost didn't put it up, but I decided to go with it. And so to describe the difference between what we've built with PubPub and what the traditional workflow is, I know this is horribly oversimplified, but you have a draft, you submit it to peer review, to a journal, it gets peer reviewed, it goes through a couple cycles, and at some point in time it's published, and then there's a whole after process, as Phil will tell you for sure. There's a whole everything that comes after the publication and everything that happened before publication. But that's sort of a simple 3-step way of thinking about it. Whereas with PubPub, what happens is that from the beginning of your work, from your lab notebook, while you're doing the research in the lab, all the way up until the day that you actually publish it, you can be writing this document, you can be saving this document, and it's much more author-driven. So the author has the power to publish it when he wants. Review can happen at any stage during this process, so you could have a first idea that you save a version of, and you get peer review from your lab mates, and then maybe you have a bigger version that you share with your whole lab or your whole university, and that gets reviewed. And then someday, you as the author decides, I want this to be public, I'm going to publish it, and then it goes out to the broader community for peer review. Let me show you what all this looks like. And so the platform is sort of a full stack of the entire publishing process. We didn't want to play the typical academic game. We weren't in that field. And so from the editor and the authoring tools up until the final journals and peer review and curation, it's sort of all together. And everything that Kristen and all the other panelists have said has been perfect and fantastic and wonderful, and I've been so excited and eager and antsy in my chair with support. But I'm reminded of a Marvin Minsky quote, one of the founding fathers of artificial intelligence, a brilliant mind in computer science, that there's nothing as scary as everyone thinking the same thing. And so hopefully I can start to say some things that you guys disagree with, and we can actually see where that goes. So this is our editing environment. It's very Google Doc-ish. So there can be 8 of us playing all at the same time. And this will be a video shortly. And try clicking. This is the thing Tim told me would happen. No? Okay, so it's a Google Doc environment. There can be a whole bunch of us writing on it at the same time, and it's all marked down, which is sort of LaTeX-ish in that you focus on the content and the styling happens after the fact. But it has these plugins that let you do this really nice incorporation of other things such as video, such as data sets, such as interactive visualizations, and all of that works pretty seamlessly. Man, none of the videos are playing. They were playing before when we tried it out. No. Okay, sorry everyone. The next slide showed a visualization. So here's an example of an interactive visualization. Maybe actually the best thing for you guys to do is actually go onto the Journal of Design and Science, and you can see it on your phones. One of the points that Roger was making was that the typical publishing pipelines and licensing agreements make it mobile sort of difficult, but all this is open access, should be pretty well formatted for your mobile phones. So you can play along on your own device as opposed to watching me. But the idea is that the document itself can be created in this rich content. You can have this rich interactive media. You can have this rich visualizations, data visualizations. And when it comes time to publish, you can see a publish button in the top right. You hit that, and sort of like a blog post, it's just there. It's on the internet. It's alive. It's ready to go. And once it is published, peer review comes in sort of as a post-publication step. And it's done by the community. You can see this white bar on the right-hand side, and the important part here is that white bar is the exact same editor as on that last page. So everything I could do to create my document, whether that's add a data set, whether that's put a video in, I can also do as a peer reviewer in the right sidebar. And so what that lets us do is say that I publish a document with a data set in it, you disagree with it, you can take that, you can clone that data set, put it in your comment, fix it, and then publish that peer review. And I can pull your edit back into my document. So rather than having peer review be this critical, you did this wrong, this needs to be fixed thing, it can be more collaborative in that you can jump in, make the fix, work with me, I'll incorporate that into my paper, and then we put you on as the person who contributed, so your peer review isn't just an empty task, but you can start to be rewarded for these meaningful contributions and collaborations. Sorry those videos aren't working. There's one of them. All right, fantastic. So the comments can also be inlined, and so you can highlight selections and you can point to those specifically. This lets you do things like if you do have an 80 or 300-page manuscript, you can highlight the relevant parts and jump straight to page 50 where you're commenting and jump to where you need to in the document. Okay, but so where did the journal go in all of this? If we have this big bucket of author-driven and author-published documents, the journals lay on top as a role of a curator. So they come in and they for their community, depict which has been peer-reviewed well, which has been up to the quality of their standards in their community, and that can mean whatever to whoever. This idea is sort of a grassroots journal idea, whereas I can create my own journal, but if I don't have a reputation, that's not going to matter much. Whereas if Richard Feynman or Neil deGrasse Tyson or someone that has this big reputation does create a journal, they don't necessarily need anything other than their reputation to be a great curator, to be someone who can be influential in saying what quality work is done. And so the Journal of Design and Science comes in as the MIT Press and MIT Media Lab saying, this is the stuff that we think our community will care about, and we've curated for them. It's free to launch, it's free to curate, and so now coming back to this original slide, what we can see is that of the first 4 articles that we put up, we had 167 discussion items. These are those peer reviews that you saw on the right-hand side. The articles can also, as I showed, can be saved versions multiple times. We had 44 revisions over the 11 documents, and the numbers in parentheses actually match up for the different documents, which I didn't notice this until I made the slide, but the documents that had the most revisions also had the most comments. So I don't know whether that's people commenting and then making changes to the document, or whether those who focused more on actually updating their document and keeping it relevant drove more of a community engagement, drove more people to focus on it. And so by putting this up, we've launched 9 or plus journals so far. We haven't launched them. Individuals have gone and launched them, and they've been pretty cool and pretty disparate. So the Journal of Design and Science by MIT Press, which is a bigger institution, the National History Observer, which is a group of people who live in Vermont and love the birds and the bird families that live near their houses, and they've been watching for decades, and they just happen to document them. And now they have a community where they can publish this sort of citizen science work to each other. We have a couple classes that are doing it to peer review each other's work and to have the teacher be the curator and the teacher be the journal, and then the articles being different class projects. And one of the more interesting ones is that the government of Mexico City, an article just came out about it this morning on Courts, which is that they just became a state. For the first time, they were a federal district before, and now they're a state, which means they get a constitution, and they're doing peer-reviewed legislation to build that constitution. And so rather than just having a bunch of legislators put something out and sign it, they're putting up these essays, having people in the platform. Will this video go? In the platform actually go and peer review this legislation, and then when it comes to be an actual bill and comes to be an actual piece of legal work, you can see the citizens' contributions that led to it, you can see the back and forth discussions that led to it, and all in an open and sort of trackable way. You can see how the versions changed over time. Okay, so why does our group want this? We want this because for us, the feedback 12 to 9 months later just doesn't work. I've had many friends who have had babies in the time that it took for their document to get published, and it seems like getting a PDF on the internet should not be as hard as creating a human. For us, the research is never finished. We don't work on a grant-based system. My lab works on a consortium that funds undirected research, and so we don't have a final end date, and so that for us means that there's never a clear time of when to publish, so we just sort of would rather always be publishing. The politics, which don't even work in our favor because we don't want careers in that game, are hindering us. And hiding the research and iteration process, I think, is very damaging. The fact that you have these papers and you just assume those scientists were right 100% of the time on their first try is not true. And the fact that you can introduce the idea that science is this wrong and iterative and messy process is a thing that I think will give us the freedom to be more honest and give us the freedom to actually acknowledge the reality of how research works. So the end of the day, our goals are to build a tool for ourselves, to reward the process of doing science and the process of creating research rather than the impact, which we were discussing last night and over the past week, which is impossible to define, I'll say, and for different fields is very different time spans. In nanophotonics, which I left, the impact time span is 40 to 50 years, and if I'm trying to get a job in a couple years on something that's not going to be meaningful for another 40 years, that's not going to happen. And we were saying last night, would Einstein have gotten a job if he had to wait until 60 years later for Einstein condensates to come around or whatever? So we also want to build this home for the unpublished, which is us, but also people who might not be able to afford to publish in traditional journals, people like the government of Mexico City who didn't think that peer review was a thing for them until it was open and free. And at the end of the day, I'm still a grad student, so data is sort of my goal, and being able to be scientific about this process, to say, okay, we tried post-publication peer review, we tried open access, we tried letting the data sets be there and have this sort of iterative peer review process that's collaborative rather than critical, and collect data on that and say whether it's working and say what changes that produces in people's behavior and research work. And I'd love to leave time for both Sarah and questions at the end, so I'm going to cut it kind of quick and say thank you. I know there's a million things I left off, so do feel free to email me if you guys have questions afterwards. Thanks.